Thank you.
Yeah, time goes quickly.
It does. And as we get older, it goes more quickly.
Yeah, in fact, the time is already 7 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and start now by reciting the Namo Tassa and the three refuges. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dhammang saranang gacchami, Sanghang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Dutiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Buddhang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Dhammang saranang gacchami, Tatiyampi Sanghang saranang gacchami. Welcome, friends, to this Wednesday evening Dhamma discussion and meditation practice. So this week we hope to finish up our discussion study of the 12 links of dependent origination, or the Paticca Samuppada. Now, last week we covered probably the most important section of the 12 links, dealing with the creation of karma. That means the links of craving, grasping, and becoming. And, we mentioned that, craving arises because of the feeling. So contact and feeling. We have this body with its sense organs. So we're always having contacts. That means sensory impressions coming through our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, as well as through our mind doors. It's like memories. So let's say all of a sudden a thought pops into your mind about, oh, I'd like to go visit this person tomorrow. Okay, that's a mind object, coming through the mind door, as opposed to just a sound coming through the ears. Anyway, the feelings, pleasant and painful feelings, arise because of that. And then arises craving or aversion, attachment and aversion. And that's just the initial attraction to an object. But it's the grasping which is actually probably the most important part of that process, because the grasping is like the intensified craving. You start to think about the object. Oh, I have to have that object, or, a fear arises. Oh, and all various thoughts that come up based on a certain object. That would be part of the grasping. The mind is grasping that, thinking, should I do it? Should I not do it? And all various types of thoughts is, in the grasping category. So that's really where most of our mindfulness comes to play. The craving is going to come out automatically, unless you're already a once returner or something. Craving or aversion is going to come up at least in a weak form. But it's the grasping that probably that's the easiest thing to pay attention to, because that's just the stream of thoughts that's constantly going through our mind, thinking about various objects. And then the the becoming is the actual, doing a karmic action. So grasping leads up to making a decision that you're going to do something, like lift your hand up to, smack a mosquito. Once you've done that karmic action, then that has made the habit stronger. That's where this word becoming, actually, bhava, is also translated as existence. I think by Bhikkhu Bodhi or some other translators translate the bhava as existence, or some others call it the being. But actually, I prefer to use the word becoming because it's more, because of the idea that it's become stronger. It either becomes stronger or it becomes weaker. If you don't have mindfulness and you just unmindfully repeat an action, then it becomes a stronger habit. But even a good habit too, it's not all bad. So the habit of getting up early in the morning to meditate, if that thought comes up and you wake up, and you have a thought, oh, maybe I'll just get another 40 winks. But then your mindfulness kicks in, no, let me get up now and meditate. It's going to be better. So you overcome that tendency for laziness. And so the habit of getting up earlier will become stronger, and the habit of laziness will get weaker. So that is the becoming stage. Now the next stage, the two stages that we're going to talk about tonight primarily, are the birth. So dependent on becoming arises birth. Now, I'm going to explain this in two different ways, as we've already seen or talked about. The Paticca Samuppada operates on the lifetime to lifetime level. From one, physical existence, you reach old age, you die, and then you are born again. And it operates on the moment to moment level, which is, what is going on from the moment you're born until the moment you die. There's only one sort of death in this lifetime, physical death. But the death of the mind states, the mental process, goes over and over and over again, millions of times in the blink of an eye. But anyway, so the lifetime to lifetime process, you've built up the karma, you've accumulated the becoming, and the habits are stronger. So then the last moment before death, the mind leaves the body. And the physical death occurs. But then the mind then re-arises in another existence as a deva, or as a human being, or in an animal body. Usually it's one of those three, depending on the karma. And then that, the process, begins again. So there's a death moment, death consciousness. In the Abhidhamma, there's something called death consciousness, chitti chitta. So that's the moment, the last moment when you're still in the body. And then there's relinking consciousness, and then the birth happens, in the next life sometimes. It's very difficult to explain really in words because there's different facets of it. But anyway, so that the becoming is what is really like the gasoline. The becoming, probably the easy description to remember is, creating the karma, and becoming is like continually pouring new gasoline into the gas tank, because that is what's going to propel consciousness to the next moment or to the next lifetime. And so that birth, and so once a person is born into the physical body, of course, there's 9 months in the womb, or however long, it might be, depending on various species, but let's just consider the human realm. Then the baby, comes out of the womb, and then, then that whole life, it's undergoing suffering. It gets sick, subject to diseases, various sufferings, and then old age, and then death. So that death is dependent on birth. And that's one of my sort of favorite connections, although the Buddha actually said that. The Buddha had been thinking, what is the cause of this suffering? He saw people with all kinds of diseases, and he saw them with, greed and hatred and fighting each other, and he says, what, and then dying, and, what is the cause of this suffering and death? And then he thought, birth, because you're born. So that's how he deduced it. And it's true if you think about it. Because if you're in deep sleep, you might be in a deep sleep, a dreamless sleep for 8 hours during the night. And for all intents and purposes, you're kind of dead, right? I mean, you're not dead, but the mind is like it's dead to the world. But the moment you wake up in the morning, boom, then all these contacts start coming, and the mind gets triggered off. Oh, I got to get to work, or this is going to happen, and then that suffering comes. So, and then that whole process continues again. Now, in the moment-to-moment process, because that's what really concerns us most as being meditators, is how does this process, birth takes place from moment to moment. And as we've already noticed before, consciousness is arising and passing away. Every revolution of the Paticca Samuppada, all those 12 links of the dependent origination, let's say, make like a revolution, like a bicycle wheel. At one point, if you're going really fast, every point on the wheel makes one complete revolution in, a fraction of a second. I don't know how many, it depends on how fast you're going. But, like in a car, RPMs, right? Okay, the engine, you're going, 1500 RPMs. So anyway, that's a complete revolution. So that's happening every moment of contact. That whole, because the ignorance is always there. The sankharas are always there. The mind and body, once we're born, we always have the mind and body. We always have the senses. They're always open for business. Contacts are occurring. And this process is going on at a very rapid speed. But we don't see the death of the consciousness or the ego consciousness because our mind is too slow to see that. So it runs it all together, as I gave the analogy of a motion picture reel of film, that you don't see the individual frames of the old style movie reels because it's going through a projector at a high speed, and the spaces in between the individual frames of the movie or the pages of a animated cartoon. It takes, move one finger of Donald Duck, it takes a whole separate drawing and flash together. So we don't see the breakup of the consciousness. So that's why we don't understand about death, the momentary death, but it's occurring. So that is the meaning of it in the moment-to-moment Paticca Samuppada. then becoming, depending on becoming, the mind is born again. But basically, it's also the ego. The ego is born again. And so it's the self, the sense of self that dies. In that sense, our body doesn't die in the moment-to-moment version of the paticca samuppada, but the sense of self momentarily vanishes, but arises again so quickly that we don't see the gap. Only when you attain very high states of meditation, sometimes then you start to see that gap of when the ego starts to sort of vanish. So anyway, the sense of self, that's what is the easiest way to understand this birth and death. The ego is undergoing birth and death every moment. And because we're born again each moment, then the suffering continues. And that goes on until finally we reach old age again, and then the actual death of the physical body occurs, and then the mind again is released, and then seeks out birth again in another form. So, and then all the attendant suffering and problems that go along with the birth, and then the death again. So birth and death is occurring, every moment of consciousness. Again, it's about the consciousness, not the physical body as such. So that's how we, try to understand this paticca samuppada. And there's something called the deathless state. So the Buddha actually attained what is called the deathless state and had stopped the wheel of becoming. You could say that, stopped the cycle of birth and death, when he attained enlightenment. And he lived for 45 more years in the physical body, but he had transcended death. And because the real death refers to the ego death in the mind. So when a person attains full enlightenment, then their sense of self and mana, conceit and identification has basically ceased. And because of that, they don't accumulate any more becoming. They don't accumulate karma. Now, the Buddha lived for 45 years. He went to lots of places, walked all over North India, and talked to thousands and thousands of people, giving thousands of discourses. But he was in a state, basically in the nirvana, but the nirvana with the aggregates. But the sense of ego had died in him. So the Buddha actually died before he died. So this process of, attaining enlightenment, that process of birth and death stops with that attainment of, full enlightenment. And especially when the person dies then. So the Buddha lived for 45 years, or so many other arhants at the time of the Buddha, Sariputta, Moggallana, so many. And they lived for many years after attaining enlightenment. But then when they finally left the last body, then that's called the parinibbana, or the complete nibbana, that the mind is no longer reborn, because that karma has been totally exhausted. So, having said that much, I know it's a very complicated thing, But since how we're on the topic of the rebirth, a lot of people sometimes they have questions about that. Question of, well, if there isn't any soul or self, what is it that's reborn? And basically, it's just the habits, the sankharas continue. They don't need a owner or controller, and they continue without there needing to be a self or a soul, or a permanent self or soul. Now, there's a temporary self. I mean, we use that term all the time, right? Myself or self, themselves. And we use the term I and me, but this is for relatively speaking, to communicate, in the normal world. But they understand that this is just a temporary identification. It's not something that's absolute and that's going to be with you forever and ever. So that's the main thing to understand about that. Let me see if does anybody have any questions you want to put in the chat box, or if anybody wants to raise the golden hand on, to ask a question about any of these things that we've been talking about in the last several weeks. Get my other eyes on to read. Okay, this question in the chat box. Once the karma is burned out, since energy can't be destroyed, what happens to the mind energy? Well, yeah, that's probably one of those unanswerable questions that the Buddha had. But I usually give this analogy of what happens to the mind energy once all the karma has been depleted. So try to imagine this scenario, that you had a jar of water, okay? It's an empty jam jar, you fill it up with water and you screw the lid on. And then you float that sealed jar of water in a larger tub of water, or the ocean, but let's say, now the water in the bottle, in the jar, is the same as the water in the larger body of water, right? But it thinks it's different. Now, the jar of the glass jar is like this physical body, and the lid screwed on top of the jar is like our conditioned mind. And so it's that conditioned mind and the sense of self that's keeping the top of the jar tightly screwed on. So the consciousness thinks it's there inside of this jar and doesn't have any way out. Now, what happens if you unscrew the lid of the jar, and then what would happen then to the water in the jar? Then any of you have an answer? Michael? Anyway, the water's not destroyed, is it?
No, it becomes one with everything.
It no longer belongs to anybody.
Mm.
So to use that expression, it's gone into the universe, so to speak. But that exactly how that is, we may not have an answer for. But that's probably one of the clearest sort of analogies of what happens when the consciousness has been liberated from ignorance, greed, and ego delusion. So, it's the water's not destroyed. It becomes the ocean, and then somebody else may scoop up that water and, into another jar, but that's not you. There's no I. Okay. And this other question, how did the ignorance arise the first time to start this cycle of dependent origination? Good question. The Buddha said, in some suttas, there's no first point of ignorance, when ignorance started and the process and samsara started and continued. There's no first point. And that's why some people say, oh, the Buddha couldn't even find the first point. He can't be enlightened, somebody else said, yeah, God started it. That was the first point. Oh, okay, well, anyway, so, but the end was found, even though we might not be able to go back and find the very first point when our individual consciousness, the continuity of that consciousness started. There can be an end point because, the Buddha realized that, as well as so many other thousands and thousands of people who attained enlightenment over the last 2,500 years. They've reached the end of that. So the end can be known, but the beginning may not be known. So that's the way that the Buddha described it. So, just because the first point can't be determined, doesn't mean that, it can't be ceased. And especially when you start meditating and you start developing, concentration, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom to higher and higher levels, and starting to get insights, then you will understand this process more clearly. But until you reach that point of some, deeper meditation and get insights on that, then you may not fully understand it. And that's why really it can only be understood through the meditation. Okay, this question I asked weeks ago, which points amongst the links is one's best shot to break free of the cycle, for example, between feeling and reacting? Well, there could be several different points, and that could be depending on a person's accumulated tendencies. One could break it at ignorance. For example, at the time of the Buddha, like the Buddha's first sermon to the group of 5 monks. So after the Buddha's enlightenment, he went to Benares and he gave the first sermon that we've talked about before to 5 monks. And after that one Dhamma talk, one of the monks got it. He attained stream entry. And the other monks had to listen to several other Dhamma talks. But within a very short time, they all attained, full enlightenment. So, because they broke it at wisdom, or abolished ignorance. That attaining the path, entering the stream, that wisdom is so powerful that it broke those three fetters. I'm not going to go into all of it right now. But anyway, so you can break it at ignorance if your faculty of wisdom is highly developed. But for most other people, it's going to be through developing mindfulness. And no, I would say the point is between craving and grasping and becoming. Those are the points you are going to have the most success, because you're not going to be able to do it between feeling and craving unless you've already developed a high degree, a level of meditation. So the best shot, because you're asking what is one best shot to break free of the cycle. So it's not between feeling and reacting, I would say. Well, it is reacting if you include the grasping. So, but I would say between the craving and grasping and becoming, what I talked about last week.
Could you give an example of a person in a situation, and they broke free between clinging and, what did you say? Between clinging and what? Grasping?
Between craving and
Craving.
grasping or becoming.
All right. Could you give an example?
I don't know. I have to think about it a minute. Nothing pops directly
Well,
to
like just for example, let's say I see some beautiful car on the street, and I start the whole cycle of lusting after the car. At which point can I kind of wake up and say, "Whoa, wait a second, let me get out of this cycle of craving and clinging and grasping with regards to this, sensual object."
I think the best way is through the meditation. When you're meditating and you get a deep insight, that is when you're able to break it. You have to reach stream entry to really start breaking the cycle.
All right, thank you.
But of course, restraining oneself whenever this craving arises, you have to reflect on it, and in ways that we've already discussed before, so that you will let go, you will transform your negative thoughts and the becoming part of the mind, and create the wholesome becoming, developing more wisdom and understanding, developing mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. These are the ways that the mental powers that are going to break, or are going to allow you to have that, those deep, powerful insights that break those fetters. Okay, this next question. I listened to a Muslim imam explain dependent origination as a set of dominoes, and that God is holding up the whole thing. Interesting. Is it interesting? I don't think so. But, I mean, there's a lot of different, people are going to, have different theories, right? Because almost every religion at some point has some idea about liberation. But a dominoes thing, analogy is, if you pull one domino out of a stack, they're all going to fall down. But to me, the Buddha has the best explanation. Is post-mortem analysis of dependent origination after certain actions are taken hopeful? Yes, of course. Reflection on the Dhamma and Paticca Samuppada is one. Even after you've done something, you can reflect on, you see this, I acted out of some unskillful thought, and this is the result. I acted out of greed, hatred, and delusion, and this is the result coming to me. or I acted with wisdom and non-attachment and metta, and this good result came to me. So yes, the Buddha encouraged that kind of reflection, and like I think I mentioned last week, when to his son Rahula about before you you do something, you should consider, is what I'm about to do going to be harmful to myself, to others, or both? And if you see it would be harmful, whether it's immediately or somewhere down the road, you should, let that go and replace it with the opposite kind of action. And then he said, you may not catch it before, but while you're doing the action, then reflect. Let's say you're starting to get angry at somebody, then you should stop and say, wait, don't let it get out of control. Check it. Even while you're doing it, even try to overcome it. Like run out of the shop or that place wherever you were about to do something unskillful. Or walk away from a person before you punch them in the face or something like that. So that comes to the reflection on the harmful consequences of what you might be about to do, or the good consequences about doing a good karmic action. So yes, that analysis, the Buddha, and then even after, then the Buddha said, okay, before you do something, consider it. While you're doing it, consider it. And after you're done, after it's finished, then you're saying, oh, you consider it again, but then you have to determine, try not to repeat it again because of the harmful, painful consequences. Okay. So, anybody have any last question they may like to ask? You have to unmute yourself if somebody's trying to say something. Okay, if no one has any other further questions, then we'll go ahead and take a few minutes break and come back and do a few yoga stretches and then have our meditation practice. Okay? I'll see you back in a few minutes. friends, so start to stand straight. Relax your shoulders and arms at the side. Just gently close your eyes. Feel your feet pressing the floor. Try to feel the outline of the standing body. Then begin some deep, slow breathing. Try to do the three-part breathing, holding the air in the lungs for 2 seconds before breathing out, developing this mindfulness of breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, standing here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Now we'll combine this breathing with these coordinated movements. So on the next in-breath, raise the arms over the head, interlock the fingers, stretch the head back, stretch the arms up, stretch upwards, and release the fingers, out breath, arms back to the sides, feel the last bit of air go out. And again, in breath, hands over the head, stretch up, bend backwards a little bit, feel the arch in the lower spine, feel the sensations, out breath, arms back to the side. Once more, in, stretch up, bend back a little more. Out. Just close the eyes. Keep the attention centered in the body, on the outline of the body. Feel the increased life force sensations, all those contacts, producing those pleasant or unpleasant sensations, itchy, prickly sensation, tingling sensation. Just remember standing, standing. Now on the next in-breath, lift up on the balls of the feet, raising the arms over the head in this way, facing the hands toward each other, stretch up. Out breath, come back down. Use the in-breath to help lift up the body, blowing up a helium balloon. Out. Once more, in, stretch, the sensations in the hand, fingers. Feel the outline of the standing body in the mind's eye. The clothing touching the outer skin. The subtler life force pulsations, vibrations under the skin. Remember standing, standing, standing. Letting your thoughts come and go in the back of the mind. The sensations of the standing body in the front of the awareness, looking into a full-length mirror. Feel the head, hands, feet, clothing. Okay, next we'll do side bending. On the next in-breath, raise both arms up. And keep your fingers and arms straight, close to your head. The out-breath, bend over the right side. Keep the arms parallel to each other, like railroad track. In-breath, lift up. And the other side, out-breath. In-breath up. Keep alternating sides with the breathing, out-breath. In, out. In, out. The out-breath, lower the arms. Close the eyes, keep feeling the body. Don't give the mind time to wander in other thoughts. The body is always right here, right now. Pulsating, vibrating. Mind and body is here, six senses are here, contacts are here, feelings are here. Okay, next we'll do the squatting or the knee bending. On the next in-breath, lift up on the balls of the feet again, raise the arms up level. On the out-breath, bend the knees and lower down, balancing on the balls of the feet. And take a deep breath, push up. Feel the muscles in the leg pushing the body up. Out breath. Be aware of any unpleasant sensations, pains in your knees and legs. In, out. In, The out breath, lower the arms. Feel the increased heartbeat. Just feel the clothing touching the outer skin, subtle pulsations under the skin. You aware of thoughts moving through the back of the mind. You aware of any grasping type of thoughts maybe going on in your mind. You can now spread the legs and feet apart about 3 feet, wider the better. And hold the arms out at the sides. Do the twisting from right to left. And breathe in. On the out breath, twist to the right. Keep your eyes focused on the hand going back. In breath back to the front. Let your feet turn with the body. Twist to the left. The out breath. In breath. Keep alternating sides with the breathing. Once more to each side. Lower the arms, relax. Feel each foot pressing the floor. The clothing touching the skin. Feel the hands and fingers. All those different sensations you're noticing are rising and vanishing. Hundreds of thousands of contacts going on pretty much simultaneously. Millions in the blink of an eye. Birth and death arising. Consciousness. The sense of I there. And now place the hands together at the chest. In breath, hands over the head. Out breath, hands to the chest. Bend your knees, lower down. Keep them back upright. And a stretch in the knees and hips. In breath, all the way up. And then out breath, let it come down a little farther. breath. Hold the outline of the body in the mind's eye. With clothing touching the outer skin. Hands touching the sides, feet pressing the floor. Eyes in the sockets. Itchy, prickly sensation. So many contacts. Now bring your legs and feet closer together. Under the head turning from right to left. And the in-breath, head to the right. And look over your right shoulder. Feel a twist in the neck. Out breath, all the way back to the left. Look over the left shoulder. In-breath, right. Left. Right. On the in-breath, let the head stop in the center. Keep the eyes closed. Feel the whole body. Feeling all those contacts. Any unpleasant and pleasant ones noticed in the mind. Liking or disliking. Okay, now we're going to do the backward and forward bending. So turn the palms outward, try to touch your little fingers together. The hands, edges of the hands are touching. So be careful with the back bends. On the in-breath, lift the hands up about level to your eyes. Begin spreading the arms out to the side as you bend backwards on the out-breath. Look up at the ceiling. In-breath, carefully lift up. Keep the arms out at the sides. On the out-breath, lower the arms and hands down towards the floor. Let the little bones in the lower spine stretch out and keep the legs straight if you can. Begin lifting up. Turn the palms outward again. In-breath. Lift the hands up. Out-breath, spread them apart, bend back. In-breath. Out-breath, downward stretch. Once more. in, out. And breath lift up. Third time, try to hold the downward stretch longer. Little bones in the lower spine stretch out. Spine joins the pelvic girdle. Begin lifting up. Breathe in, bring the hands to the chest. Out breath, hands back to the sides. Close the eyes, feel the whole body vibrating, pulsating with activated life force. All those billions of cells, molecules, and atoms vibrating, producing all those sensations. So feel as though you're standing on a vibrating machine, feeling all those vibrations from the soles of the feet up to the top of the head. Standing, body-centered, present moment awareness. Okay, now let's come back to our seats and get ready for the sitting. Just get comfortable in the sitting posture. Align your head and spine in a straight line. Gently close your eyes. Feel the eyes in the socket. Feel your head balanced on top of the spinal column. Feel the skin stretched over the front of the face. From that point, let the awareness expand. You can feel the outline of the sitting body, the sense of the head on top, the arms and hands at the sides, clothing touching the skin, feet tucked underneath, buttocks pressing the floor. Try to keep your chin level with the ground. Try to hold that outline of the sitting body in the mind's eye. Just mentally remember sitting, sitting. Then begin some three-part breathing again. Drawing the air from the lower lung up to the top. Feel that expansion in the upper chest, holding the air in for 2 seconds. And slowly breathing out, feel the last bit of air go out of the lung. Just take several more deep, slow breaths like that. Developing this mindfulness of breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, letting go of the past and future. Breathing out, sitting here and now. Breathing in, feeling the whole body. Breathing out, feeling the whole body. Now we're going to try counting our breaths from 1 to 10. Develop a more continuous concentration on the breathing. I'll do the counting for you. Just try to follow that with your breathing and concentration. So with the next expanding in breath, mentally count to 1. Hold the breath a second. With the contracting out breath, also count to 1. Feel the last bit of air go out of the lung. Next in breath, 2. Out breath, 2. In 3. Out 3. In 4. out 4, in 5, out 5, in 6, out 6, in 7, out 7, in 8, out 8, in 9, out 9, in 10, out 10. Now discontinue the counting, discontinue, let the breathing return to its uncontrolled or shorter, irregular rhythm, but you continue to observe it, to feel it, keep your attention focused on the middle of the body, on the outline of the body, feeling that residual expanding and contracting in the middle of the body, and just knowing when the breath is coming in and knowing when the breath is going out. And know it by feeling the sensation, either the expanding and contracting sensations or the air flowing through the nostrils. To help stay focused, you can use these brief mental reminders of in, sitting, out, out, sitting. Start to tune in to the 4 phases of each breath cycle, expanding in breath and the brief pause, the contracting out breath and the brief pause, just over and over and over again. Just be like a scientist looking down through the microscope, observing that experiment of breathing. Just feeling all those contacts, all those changing sensations are different contacts producing different sensations. Be alert for any thoughts arising in the mind, especially any desire, aversion, or grasping thought. So if your mindfulness and concentration are fairly good, you can just contemplate, the Paticca especially have this mind and body sitting here, the six senses, all these different contacts constantly coming and going, sounds to the ears, thoughts in the mind, so many body sensations. Especially be aware of any painful or pleasant sensations the mind grasps at, thinks about. If you still have lots of thoughts, go back and do some three-part breathing to help stay more centered in the body, feeling more dynamic sensations of expanding and contracting to help hold the attention in the present moment. Another way of contemplating birth and death is birth and death of each breath. The in-breath starts, lasts a few moments, and stops or dies. And the out-breath starts, lasts a few moments, stops or dies. Followed by another birth and death of the next in-breath, birth and death of the next out-breath. Stay alert, awake, and notice how more and subtler sensations, sound, thoughts arising and vanishing, coming and going. Each of those separate arising and vanishing are a separate turning of the whole wheel. The wheel of becoming. Especially that sense of self or I in the mind. It's really the result of the becoming, coming, giving rise to birth, the birth of the ego consciousness. Especially be alert when any painful sensations arise and the mind starts grasping at them. Notice that initial craving, aversion, the mind grasping at it, thinking about it, worrying about it. Making some decision about it. Breathing in, sitting. Breathing out, sitting. So many different contacts coming and going. Body sensations, sounds, thoughts, feelings, perception, desire. Try to observe or contemplate the connection between those links of mind and body, six senses, contacts, feelings, craving, grasping, becoming, birth and suffering. When feelings or thoughts arise based on that sound contact, sabbe sankhara anicchati yada panyaya pasati Atanibindati dukhi esamaggo visuddhiya nati janam panyacha panyanati ajaito Yam hi janancha panyacha siri nibbana santiki. All conditioned things, the five aggregates of this body, mind, and world are impermanent. They arise only to briefly last, then vanish. When one sees this with the eye of wisdom, one becomes disenchanted with suffering. This is the path to freedom. And there's no concentration without wisdom, no wisdom without concentration. One who is both concentrated and is wise is close to peace and freedom. And thus spoke the Buddha. Now mindfully place your hands at the edge of your knees And take a deep, slow breath as you breathe in. Stretch your head back. Pull the hands on the knees to arch your spine. Lift the head up on an in-breath. On the out-breath, press your chin to the top of the chest to stretch the neck vertebrae. Lift the chin up level on an in-breath. And relax on the out-breath. And I invite you to join in chanting the word sadhu 3 times slowly. Do the chanting on a long out breath. So take a deep, slow breath. Sadhu. Breathe. Sadhu. Breathe. Sadhu. Okay, friends, so this brings our evening Dhamma discussion and meditation to an end. But as I always say, the mindfulness should never end. It means it's this present moment awareness. And just remember, mindfulness a day keeps dukkha away, so that this brings our discussion of the Paticca Samuppada to an end this week, and next week we'll have another interesting discussion about the various stages of meditation. Okay, so until then, be well, be safe, be mindful, be wise. Namo Buddhaya.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.
You're welcome.
Good night, Bhante.
Good night.